Hey, and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about how to create positive self-talk and be your champion rather than your biggest critic. We're going to be diving into why it is that we have an inner critic within us and why it's so common for people to have negative self-talk. Also, I would really like to dive into how you can change that and what aspects of yourself you need to bring to the surface in order to be your biggest champion. And it never ceases to amaze me that we can be kinder to our friends than we can to ourselves. That our inner critic is so strong and so loud that we hinder ourselves from being able to take action and move forward. And I know that one of the biggest factors of our inner critic is the sentence, what if? What if I fail? What if I succeed? What if I don't know enough? These are all questions that we ask ourselves that produce fear. And to go from a life of fear to a life of empowerment, the key is to change our negative self-talk to positive self-talk, where we can really step into who we need to be, that is limitless, that doesn't need to be riddled by fear. And I know that it seems impossible to change your negative self-talk if it's really ingrained in you. I know that some people don't even know it's possible to change that inner critic. So I ask you in this video to just bring the attitude of I can. Because you can. Because I know so many people that have done it. Because I've done it. And it is entirely possible to rewire your brain to the positive and not the negative. Now, I'll share with you a story about when I first started coaching. It was scary. There was a lot of unknown. And I had some really serious limiting beliefs about myself. And one of those limiting beliefs was, what if I'm not smart enough? And the other one was, what if I fail? And that inner voice was telling me that everyone else was smarter, that everyone else had business experience. And I remember one day thinking to myself, what if I fail? And I was just paralyzed by fear. And the thing was that I was working in hospitality before I started coaching. And I worked all over the world in restaurants and hotels and bars. And now I realize that I did those jobs because I had a limiting belief about not being smart enough to do other jobs. And so when these limits came up for me, when this inner critic said to me, you can't, because you're not smart enough, I remember questioning it for the first time. And I remember questioning my own self-talk when one day I was walking up the hill. I can't remember, I was going for a hike somewhere. And I thought, what if I can't do this? And I had been working on myself and I had been supported and coached by other coaches. And for the first time, I said to myself, well, if I can't do it, I'll just go back to working hospitality. It's no big deal. But I wasn't riddled by fear anymore. The question of what if didn't have to paralyze me. And I think that for me, that was a game changer when I realized that I was questioning my own inner talk and not letting it affect the way that I showed up. And eventually the voice got quieter and quieter until it wasn't there anymore. And now I can honestly say I have no self-doubt because I've been able to rewire my brain to go to automatic default positive rather than automatic default negative. And it makes sense that we have this automatic negative default, because when we were cavemen back in the day, we had to save ourselves from lions and tigers and bears. And the way that our mind helped us do that was to doubt ourselves, was to keep us safe. Because if we were wanting to go out of the cave, there were saber-toothed tigers out there. And so we had to be wary. We had to doubt whether we were able to or not. And now, as we've developed as a species, the only real danger out there is the fears that we perceive within ourselves. They're not real fears. You're not going to die if you go out onto the street and do a speech in public. But that's what it still feels like, because that protection mechanism is playing out. So I trust this helps you to understand that it's okay that you have negative self-talk right now. Or if you're improving and you're noticing that, go you. That's awesome. Self-doubt is a really natural part of our journey and our learning, because it's trying to keep us small. And you being here means that you don't want to be small anymore. I know that you want to find out what you're made of. You want to reach your full potential. And that means going outside of your comfort zone. And it also means rewiring your brain so that you have that positive self-talk. What was the quote? There was a quote. The other thing is that when you have a directionalized focus, when you're always wondering about the what ifs or all the things that could go wrong or all the fears, I'm sure you'll notice that what we focus on, we get. And you will always find what you're looking for. So if you're focusing on the negative will happen. If you focus on the positive will happen. So as a business owner, we start the momentum of focusing on the positive, on focusing on the success, focusing on the goals, focusing on what we can control. And that is how we change our thoughts to positive thoughts. Instead of focusing on the negative things and then them coming to fruition, because we're wasting energy. We're literally wasting our capacity, spending our precious energy on the things that are outside of our control, or on the things that scare us, focusing our energy on the fear. And this is a journey, right? So it takes a long time to understand this. It takes awareness. It takes showing up for yourself. And it takes you consciously choosing every single time to go down the positive path rather than the negative path. And it's okay every now and again if you have negative thinking. We all drop below the line sometimes and have that negative default. But as long as you're aware that you're doing it. Because the relationship that we have with ourselves determines the relationship that we have with others. And if we can build that trust within ourselves, build that positive self-talk, we can get out of our own way. And when we don't have to worry about ourselves anymore, then we can extend ourselves to others. And that's the true part of empowerment, is not hindering yourself anymore so that you can show up in a way that you want to. And then people see that you're buzzing. People see that you're empowered. People see that you're on a mission. And that's when they want to follow you. But if you're a business owner that has really negative self-talk and you're doubting yourself, you're second-guessing yourself, you're worrying about what others think, then your team is going to do that too. Because business is a mirror. Your team is a mirror for your personal development and your progression. So I trust that you're loving this message because it's important. that we recognize that we can do it. We can rewire our brain and therefore become our own champions and help ourselves to achieve all the things that we need to achieve. I remember that Nathan Fave, I don't know if you know him, he's an adventure racer. He was being interviewed by the press, and he's currently #1 in the world for adventure racing. And him and his team just smash every race that they do. And the reporter asked him, "What's the key to your success?" And he said, "We only focus on ourselves." So all the other adventure racers, they're always looking at where the other teams are on the map to see whether they're beating the other teams or not. But Fave and his team, they're only focusing on themselves and not wasting energy focusing on others. And that's one of the big things, that people care so much about what others think. They really want to do good by others. They don't want to stand on people's toes. And I'm sure you've experienced this yourself. You question your interaction with others. But how about you just rock on and be you? How about it doesn't matter if you hurt their feelings as long as you can communicate and apologize? How about if you just rock on and be you, you'll figure it out along the way. And when you allow yourself to take the hard road, when you get to that fork in the road and you can go down the path that's easy, just to stay small, to do the same thing that you've always done, that's not the path of a leader. The path of the leader is to go down the other fork, the other side, the unknown. And that is what's going to bring fulfillment and love and joy in your life. Because you find out what you're made of. You find out that you truly do matter and that you have a purpose and you're on a mission in this world. And that will create that real positive momentum for you to build trust with yourself and to continue to thrive as a business owner. So how are we going to do this? It's all very inspirational, but what are the steps? So step 1 is to let go of the need to get it right. There is no right or wrong in this world. Who's right and who's wrong? We're all seeing life through a filter. We're all seeing life as our own interpretation. So what is the right thing to do? Well, honestly, there is no right or wrong. It's all just feedback. And I really love the saying that we are just humanity experiencing ourselves. And that to me means that we're just showing up and figuring it out. That there is no right way to live life. And if you're afraid all the time of not living life the right way, or not doing right by others, or not being right because you need to be right to stay in control, life is so much easier. You stop pushing shit uphill and you start flowing with life because you're ready to give life a go. There's a beautiful quote that's, "Say yes and figure out how." And for me, that was the whole reason I got into coaching, was because it scared the shit out of me. Say yes and figure out how helps us to recognize that we don't have to know. We don't have to know whether it's right or wrong. We don't even have to know how to do it. But we're resourceful enough to figure it out. And I love the image of the duck. And you can see the duck swimming on the pond. And the duck's just cruising along. But underneath the water, those little legs, those little feet are going mental. But you don't see that. So on the surface, we glide with elegance and grace. And underneath, we're like, fuck, how do we even do this? You figure it out. And you just put one foot in front of the other. And if there's no right or wrong, then it's all just feedback. If you do it wrong, you won't next time. It's that learning and development, that trust that you build with yourself. And when you do it wrong, you learn the lesson so much harder than you would if you busily prepared and tried to get all your ducks in a row and then did the thing. Just go and do it and stop procrastinating on it and stop trying to get it right, because you know deep down inside you that you can figure it out if you allow yourself the experience. And I trust that you can too. So what are you taking away from this message? Letting go of the need to get it right is a big thing for a lot of my clients, because they just are so caught up in needing to get it right. And some would argue that depends what industry you're in. If you make the wrong financial choice. Well, I remember reading a book about a guy that was an investor, and he invested and lost $10 million for their company. And he went into the boss's office and he put down his form, and he said, "I guess you're going to fire me now. I lost so much money for the company." And the boss says, "Why would I fire you? I just spent $10 million educating you." So yes, stakes are high in some industries, and the learning and growth is way more important than any dollar that you can put on it. So the next step is to make sure that you acknowledge yourself for what you have done. We are so good at deleting information about how awesome we are, and we don't see ourselves as others see us. And I notice as well that in New Zealand we're trying to stay really humble because of the tall poppy thing. You don't want to acknowledge yourself. You get berated for being too proud. And that creates that negative loop within our mind, because we can't see all of our greatness because we're too busy trying to fit in and be humble. And the networking meeting that I facilitate, I started a new trend of acknowledging ourselves. And I think it took 6 weeks of every single week for me going there saying, "What would you like to acknowledge yourself for?" that people started to finally say, "Oh, I actually have done this really awesome thing." Or it was really great that this week I was able to show up every single day because I was feeling pretty tired, and I'm pretty proud of myself for doing that. So making sure that you're acknowledging yourself for all of your greatness. And maybe you need an accountability buddy. Talk to your partner or your family. Say to them, "I'm trying to recognize all the good things I've done. Can you help me?" Because otherwise those filters are going to tell you that you haven't done anything great. But maybe just write down right now, what's one great thing that you love that you've done in the last week? And we do this by creating small steps and small goals. And we've already talked about how to break goals down. So recognizing that those little benchmarks are building trust with ourselves, and we need to celebrate them. So what are you going to do to celebrate? How are you going to acknowledge that you've done all of the amazing stuff and create the neurology, rewire your brain to recognize all of those things by celebrating and taking a moment to update your neurology, update yourself of how awesome you actually are. I talked a little bit about how our mind goes into negative default because of our caveman days. And I think it's important to write these things down, because we don't ever stop in life. Life is so busy that we don't press pause. And I trust that's one of the reasons why you love having a coach, is because it's time for you. It's time to press pause. So make sure you are writing these things down. I don't know if you're writing in a diary, or maybe you could create one just for all of the things that you love, that you've done, and you're really proud of yourself for. Now, the next step is to have gratitude. Gratitude gets thrown around, and I know it's a buzzword for some people, but gratitude is honestly the answer to life. It's the answer to rewire our brain. And if you haven't already got a gratitude practice, that might be something you could consider. Because as you start to practice gratitude, you will notice all of the possibilities. You will start to notice that there is so much more around you than you have been giving credit to. There's wonderful interactions that you've had in everyday life that maybe you haven't acknowledged. And that makes you generally more optimistic. And it means that you're seeing the good in life rather than the negative in life. I did a paper in positive psychology recently, and they state that positive psychology, being a new sort of movement, is helping people to recognize all of the positive things in the world and makes you believe in the world, makes you believe in the good of the world, and helps you to create that momentum within yourself that's going to help you achieve your dreams. I did a really powerful experience with a client of mine, and it was helping her to create that positive movement. And the experience is called the inner child experience. And you can do it right now with me. So what I'd like you to do is close down your eyes and take a couple of really deep breaths. And as you're sitting there in the room, I'd like you to bring an image of yourself when you were younger into your mind. And just connect with that person, the you that is you, before life happened and told you that you weren't good enough, or that you weren't smart enough, or that you didn't know enough. Just innocent little you. And just connect with that version of yourself. Because how can you have negative self-talk if you're talking to the little child in you that just wants to be heard, that just wants to have her dreams come true? You need to nurture and support that child, because that is who you are. And allow her to experience her dreams and not hinder her from doing those things. So take a couple of really deep breaths in. Be there with yourself. Acknowledge yourself for how far you've come. Acknowledge yourself for the wonderful life that you've created and all of the relationships that you have. And when you're ready, give your younger self a big hug in your mind. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So there might be some emotion that's coming up right now. There might be some memories. Or maybe you know your younger self and you've connected with them before. And that's wonderful. So what does this mean now? What does it mean for you that you're connected to that person, that younger version of you? And that you're protecting her by showing up for her, but that you trust her enough that you can both go out into the big wide world, into the unknown, and take that path less trodden that is outside of your comfort zone, so that you can live your dream, so that you can have everything that you've ever wanted, because you truly are worth it. And it will be the rewiring of your brain and your positive self-talk that will help you get there. So just to go over those 3 points again: let go of the need to get it right. Acknowledge yourself for what you have done. And the last one, gratitude. Mainly gratitude for yourself and your younger self rather, and all the amazing things that you've done. That's gratitude. I know that this is an emotional video, and I know that it might be a little bit hard for you. And know that you are safe in this space, that you are being held and supported. And please feel free to reach out if you need to. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.